the second match going up against Nebulae, but Nebulae ultimately just won them 2-1. But I hope Amuse Blaze will get the scarf this time, or he will be playing this time, so we can witness the prowess of that little dragon.
Yep, Scarf, definitely a very strong pick, as always. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets banned out. But speaking of the bans and the drafts, we will be going into that in just a second. So let us know, as always, in the chat which team you guys are supporting for this third place matchup. And without further ado, let's go into the draft.
Right, so coming into this draft, we have Bren Esports on the blue side, and we have J3X Inferno, very apt on that of the red side. The first bans coming out would be that of Grace, and in response, I'll not be surprised if Lance will be banned out, Lance being very, very strong, and we don't really want to give it over to Bren Esports, who have been quite a menace on that Lance.
Not want to give that over indeed. I mean, it's a very good ban to go with if they want to go for it first. I mean, we've talked about before that this first ban slot is usually open to these kind of very meta roamers and captains at the moment, because they play such an important role into how aggressive the team can play, and just the CC that a lot of them provide, heroes like Grace and like Lance, is just uncontested.
Yep, they are, however, just taking their time, the side of Nebulae at this point. They are thinking whether or not Lance should be a valuable pickup, but hearing from the casting desk, hearing from us, I must say Lance is definitely the go-to, and just allow that of maybe Bren Esports to pick up that Arden that they seem so very comfortable on. But of course, they might want to secure the Lance for themselves, for the side of Nebulae at least. But we do know that, we don't see quite a lot of Lance coming from Nebulae. He hasn't quite been in their pattern so far. They would usually, J3X Esports at least, J3X Inferno, they would usually want to settle for maybe that Arden and Catherine that may just be open. But Lance, giving away Lance means that they will not be able to secure it for themselves or banning it away as well.
Yep, and we are here in the draft again. It has been reset, but that Grace ban still applicable. The question is, what will the first ban be coming out from the side of J3X Inferno? And then following through with that, what the first pickup may be. And I guess it all depends on who we see banned out here, if we ever see it.
If we ever see it, wow. I mean, the side of J3X Inferno have got a wide variety of choice. The entire 34 heroes is still on the board. And they can either remove the weapon pestle, give that Lance over, or just remove the Black Feather that kind of was a threat to Infamous as well. So at this point in time, they are still taking their sweet time, or maybe there are some issues with draft client, or we do not know. But like you said, if it was even locked in or ever locked in, 8 seconds in, 7 seconds in, and we have still yet to see a ban coming out from the side of J3X Inferno. We will be seeing yet another ban or draft reset. This time, hopefully, J3X Inferno will lock something in. Lance will be the most, the best choice at this point in time, going up against Bren Esports. That Guessing X has been an incredible player. Very, very surprising actually when we saw Margin just swapped out of Bren's roster, and in the place of Margin we saw Guessing X. Guessing X, if you do not know, was from the Challengers, and coming into the Vainglory 8, he has been exceptional with the Lance pick, and we do see the Lance being banned out by the side of J3X Inferno.
Yep, and so speaking about that Lance, especially giving it over to Guessing would be quite the problem. So it's a very targeted ban, but also quite a meta ban at the moment. And it does allow Idris to go through and manages to be the first pick for the side of Bren Esports.
Yep, I mean, Idris, very, very strong pickup as well, has been banned all throughout whenever Bren Esports plays. So able to pick it up for themselves definitely would be a good choice for them. Or maybe Mr. Jimmy is just so very comfortable. But in order to counter, the side of J3X Inferno can easily pick up the Glaive and just counter. However, we will be seeing that of Lyra being picked out. So maybe they want to ban out a mage at this point in time, or maybe even Sky or Petal, but they will ban out that of Taka. They are obviously playing into the hands of the side of Bren Esports, if to say the least, because we saw Sync1 on that Sky and played quite well. However, Bren Esports will just remove that Celeste. Very likely will pick up that weapon Petal for themselves.
You think the weapon pedal will go through? That's a very interesting assumption there and prediction. But I do think the Taka ban that they went through is a pretty decent ban, especially if you're going to pick up that Lyra. You don't want your healing to be negated by the mortal wound that Taka can apply. So that Taka ban, not a bad idea. Oh, and the Scarf pickup, even better idea to go for. Especially with Celeste being banned out in the fold, it does mean that Scarfs are only real strong mage at the point to pick up at least for that long range and going into the late game, just very good scaling kind of hero. I think it's a good pick. Scarf not getting banned out in any of the slots there, so no question about it. The only thing that I do worry about is the Lyra pickup overall in case of Idris just being able to make it through to the backline. I understand with Bright Bulwark you'll be able to shut down the Shroud step from Idris onto Scarf, but it's really isn't worth it that much to go for the Lyra when there were so many other roamers still available, and they're going to allow the Arden and Weapon Power Pedal into the hands of Bren Esports.
Yep, and that is what I'm talking about. Whenever you see a Celeste ban coming out from Bren Esports, very highly likely you'll see a Petal being picked up. And thus, I was surprised actually J3X Inferno did not pick up the Petal for themselves. They are also another known team to actually come up with very wacky, very new team comps all in all. But I guess it might just play into Bren Esports' hands at this point in time. A CP Idris with an Arden and a weapon Petal that would probably in that of jungle. So if that is the case, then the side of J3X Inferno can basically use that to their advantage. However, like I mentioned before, Petal has to be very aggressive in that early game just to get items early, just so to negate the power spike or the power dip you get in that of the mid game when all the other heroes have got, you know, all their items and their abilities up. And as a Petal, you want to get a trampoline, you want to get, you know, 2 or 3 damage items before you put out good damage all in all. However, going up against a Fox as a Petal and CP Idris going up against a Vox on a weapon Vox, sorry, it will be a relatively easy game for the side of Bren Esports, but it's just down to execution. This time we will once again be seeing a Moose Blaze on that of Scarf. Hopefully be seeing a Moose Blaze on that Scarf, else we'll see Kalua on that Rona.
Well, we did see how well Amox Blaze did play on the Scarf previously in that match up against if I believe Nebulae. They did put up a good fight, however it wasn't enough. I thought that Amox Blaze played a lot better in the jungle role to be on that Scarf, and actually just quite well for the whole team, and it looked very promising for them. So I think if they're going to be able to put up a good fight against Bren Esports, that could be the key they're looking for. However, the question is, with a weapon powered Petal, you know, is it going to be Mr. Jim or is it going to be Sync1 playing it? Are they going to put in the jungle or are they going to put in the lane?
I think there is only one place to put this Petal at this point in time, and that would be in that of jungle on Sync1. Only reason being, and Idris shouldn't really quite be in that of jungle, since you really need, you know, those items to just progress and get your divergent path unlocked, and you don't quite need those levels per se. But I guess
we saw a bit of miscommunication there, because that's correct. Both of them can play that Petal. I'm sure you saw that as well, Luxuria.
Yep, I did see that. Both of them really vying for that weapon Petal at this point in time. But one of you guys still have to go for that Idris, if anything. But all in all, I personally think that Idris should be in lane running that CP Idris, and then of course you have Weapon Pato in the jungle. Although we saw in one match when Weapon Pato is placed in the jungle, you don't quite have enough gold to achieve all your items in a stipulated amount of time, just so to negate that mid-game level deep that you actually get. And so it is just down to execution and whether or not Bren Esports can push their advantage all in all.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot better to, at least what we've seen indicated of Mr. Jim picking up that Idris. I think he will play that a lot better, especially in lane, as you mentioned, more than likely. But with having the pedal in the jungle means they're more than likely to go up against the Scarf. And I'm not sure whether that's going to shut them down fairly hard. As you mentioned, early game, this pedal is going to have quite a tough time against a Scarf who can just destroy all the minions with a single Dragon's Breath, with a single Spitfire.
Well, I mean, single Dragon's Breath as well, but all in all, I don't think Amu's Blaze plays too aggressively for that to, work at all. But we do see, though, Bren Esports very aggressive in terms of their maneuvers. They are going in very, very deep through the top brush, through the bottom brush, through every brush they can get. But Kulua in that, they are going to push this out. They are doing the sentry rotation-esque. So they will be pushing this lane out and hopefully just rotate down and apply pressure. But Bren Esports, however, they will just take the safe route and head down to take that mid-Treant, or rather the Elder Treant, together.
Yes, Bren Esports forcing the side of J3X Inferno to actually have to go for that turret to defend it by putting down the minion candies, but Kalua able to steal away the Elder Treant, and now it looks like they've got the confidence to push into the enemy jungle a bit further. Mr. Jim getting caught up in the goop and the Spitfire landing. There isn't too much they can do right now, but Sync1 at least able to secure their own jungle for the mid camp, now being forced into the backs, and J3X Inferno being very aggressive right now. They might be looking for more.
Yep, they might be looking for more. Kalua, though, still in the jungle, managed to take one, but Sync1, you should just bug off now. Get it? Get it? So
yes, Sync1 should definitely run away at this point in time. They're taking a fair bit of damage and just forced to back in the end, losing out a lot of time that could be used to either out-rotate the enemy and go for their backs, or just be able to be doing better things with your time. Because meanwhile, we see up in lane, Nightbimbim doing a great job on his own to keep away the team of Bren Esports, and now the siege coming out from the side of J3X Inferno. They should be able to take this first turret in that first push. 2 minutes 16 in, and they get the first turret. That's just the power of Scarf mostly, and the siege potential behind that. But of course, Nightbimbim doing a great job up in the lane up until that point.
Of course, we have to fault Mr. Jim as well. On an Idris, usually you do not have the fastest clear speed as compared to a Vox in lane. And with Kalua and the sustain as well, it will be difficult to try to push your wave against Nightbimbim on this Vox. So, but overall, very, very well played coming out from J3X Inferno, getting the turret just mere 2 minutes in, and definitely with that amount of pressure and that early gold lead, right? I mean, even looking now, they are sitting at, say, close to 2k gold lead for the side of J3X Inferno, definitely beating well for them. So
yeah, they are doing well, and it is very good to have such an early gold lead and for it to be that much at this stage of the game, and it does strike well for the side of J3X Inferno as they push in further. I mean, Nightbimbim already sitting on that poison shiv with his first item. Meanwhile, Mr. Jim, he's not really looking close to anything at this point, just a bit all over the board with everything else. And Sync1, to say the least, is still fairly behind on AMs, although they have a fair amount of gold in their pocket for when they go and shop. It just shows that right now how far ahead J3X Inferno have got themselves, and this could be the key to shutting down the weapon power of Pedal Comp.
Yep, I mean, aggression. As long as you can out-aggress that of the weapon battle, you can definitely shut him down. Once again, J3X Inferno just diving in very, very deep into the jungle. of Bren Esports. And Sync 1, you better just bug pedal off. If not, then Guessing X.
Yep, Guessing X does take a lot of damage. They're forced to go back to base, and good rotations coming out from Mr. Jim. Meanwhile, taking this opportunity to go deep into the enemy jungle as they stole away the back. So not letting them go, not letting them get away with everything and come out empty-handed from that situation. And Mr. Jim actually taking a smart back position by going up to the less common one rather than just behind the Crystal Sentry, went up behind where the healing triad was.
Yep, but all together, I mean, that two backs would not quite hurt Inferno. All in all, it was just 87 gold. But we do see, though, Naibim being very aggressive in terms of positioning, and will just back off in the end, meeting all three members of Bren Esports, Sync 1 very, very low.
Yep, Sync 1 actually going to fall to the hands of the Scarf, and right now J3X Inferno being so aggressive, just not even worrying about the Crystal Sentry that's in there, making the jungle their own basically at this point, and they're really pushing this lane as well. We look at Naibim seeing at 55 CS, and Mr. Jim doing a decent job, but seeing behind at 49 at the moment. And they're going to get so much more for it as they push into the backs. And it really where it's hurting the most for the side of Bren Esports is definitely for Pedal, who's sitting back at 13 CS. Meanwhile, Scarf ahead at 26 is helping them out so much more. They have their Frostburn already, and they're going to get a lot more arms out of this one. Probably looking for Eve next, and they'll be able to pick up a heavy Prism, no doubt. And yeah, that's all they're going to get out of that. But if we look meanwhile at Sync 1, whose back just got cancelled by Kahlua, they are quite a bit behind with, once again, a similar thing to Mr. Jim, where their build was a bit all over the board with this heavy steel, swift shooter, and Sixtons. Of course, Sync 1 more than likely going for that Sora Blade first, but they're quite a while off from getting that.
Yep, quite a while indeed. But Naibim manages to clear the entire jungle of or rather not Bren Esports, but J3X Inferno, and they will be going in looking for a fight with that infusion on Naibim on that, folks. Oh, the amount of damage on the Scarf, though, Guessing X better be careful.
Yep, and we'll see that it looks like Inferno going to be putting down a lot of pressure once again. Guessing in the front line is tanking up a lot of it, but Sync 1 can't do the same. He's quite squishy at the moment with only an Okar for defense. There's going to be Kahlua going over the wall with Divine Intervention into the Bright Bulwark, trying to catch out Guessing, but it's not going to be enough. Meanwhile, Mr. Jim trying to do what they can, but they haven't built up the damage they need on this CP Idris, and we'll see that Inferno actually able to push away, get the Crystal Sentry, and turn this fight around, almost catching Guessing out, but not quite. Amok's Blaze now need to be careful as they're fairly low in health, but Kahlua is still up, and they should have that Imperial Sigil available in a few seconds. However, Amok's Blaze just deciding to go back to base, and Naibim going to use that to heal up and escape.
Yep, Naibim, or rather the entirety of J3X Inferno, so relentless with their push and so very aggressive in this early game, just starting the push. But Bren Esports may just find a footing once Mr. Jim gets maybe another item, because, I mean, all in all, we are seeing a lot of aggression coming out from the side of J3X Inferno. But what we are not seeing is their ability to push whatsoever, right? So they are giving breathing space to Mr. Jim on that CP Idris. However, with Mr. Jim having to take the farm of Sync 1, means that Sync 1 cannot quite finish that Tornado Trigger, if not, and Tyrant's Monocle needed to put out that extra damage in that mid-game. And instead of J3X Inferno, they are going for the gold mine, oblivious to the side of Bren Esports.
Yeah, and that's just the siege coming out from the Scarf and how easy it is to take objectives when you have a Scarf on that team. And to finish it off, they have the Bobs as well, so it's going to be such great sustain into the late game for the whole team. But Amok's Blaze, once again, taking a fair amount of damage, but able to escape. Meanwhile, there's the Gauntlet being used on the side of Bren Esports. It does catch out Naibim, but was used in defense, so now they're going to have to run for it. And there's the Dragon's Breath coming out. Can they catch up? There's going to be the Shimmer Strike onto Guessing, just so Mr. Jim can get out of it. But now they have to hold this turret, or try their best to. You can see the slowly, after picking up that second heavy prism that Mr. Jim CB Chakram's doing a lot more damage to Armok's plays, but it's not going to be enough, is it? No, it doesn't look like it will. Petal will be the one to fall when Mr. Jim forced back, needs to go back to that base. Wow, okay, Armok's plays getting caught out by the turret. Kill credit going over to Sync 1.
Yep, that will be good gold going over to Sync 1. No doubt it will not be like a shutdown 600 gold, but every gold for the side of Bren Esports now have to count for something. The side of J3X Inferno definitely looking very strong, very aggressive as compared to when they were up against Nebulae. When they were up against Nebulae, they were looking relatively shaky, all in all. But I must say, maybe in the next game itself, we might see the side of Bren Esports just banning out the Scarf for once and just go with, Scarf and the Celeste ban. Scarf looking to just constantly able to shut down Sync 1 on that petal for a lot of games now.
Yeah, that could be the case, and not a bad idea for the side of Bren Esports to do into the next match, because really letting it go through is just too much. And I think that when it comes to the bans, if you're trying to focus out these caster heroes, you can only ban one away if you're not expecting the enemy to ban the other. And we see that Sync 1 taking a fair amount of damage there. I do think that it's really the case to shutting down this Petal a lot of the time, that if Petal isn't able to get where they need to in the early game, it kind of makes it even harder into the mid game, where you said Petal starts to fall off. I mean, how is Petal supposed to even make it to the late game at that point? And this powerhouse that we saw Bren Esports being yesterday, and even at the start of today, it's just a bit of a different story now, as we see Inferno pushing through them with ease, taking out the Arden, followed up by the Idris, and they're chasing Sync 1 back into their base at this point. And just to say that 11 minutes in, the fact that Bren Esports are already back at that anchor turret, and it could be less than that if they're not able to stop the push coming in from J3X Inferno. Looks like they will be able to. Kahlua tanking up a bit too many shots from that turret, has to back off for now.
Yep, has to back off, but the next best option will be that of Gold Mine, which is open for the taking. However, Chakram may just be able to secure and steal it away from the side of J3X Inferno. They will shop up, they will get infusions, and they will be looking another fight.
Yep, Bim applying a lot of pressure. Give them the speed boost again. Bright Bulwark used to keep them close, but Sync 1 hasn't used that trampoline just yet. Uses it now to get away from the fight, and there's going to be the gauntlet to push away the team of J3X Inferno. But that's all it can be used for right now. Guessing not using those gauntlets offensively, just using them defensively, and a great Spitfire making its way onto the backline to pick up the kill onto Petal, and they follow up with the kill onto the Idris. This is surely going to go down. The anchor turret falls for the side of Bren Esports, and J3X Inferno push into the base. They might be looking for more. I mean, they've got the Petal. There's no one up on the enemy team to do so except Guest Singh, and he's not going to be enough. They're going to take the Arcane Passage out of the base and get out there alive.
Oh wow, what aggressive, what aggressive. I want to say aggression and aggressive at the same time, and it came out with aggression. But Bren Esports will not go down without a fight and will be coming back to hope for a return kill of some sort, since Amul's Blaze on that Scarf is relatively low on energy, could only afford that goop as Spitfire 1, but that's about it. But what aggression coming out from Bren, or rather J3X Inferno right here, not allowing whatsoever for Mr. Jim and gang to even catch a breather. We saw the amount of aggression coming out of Bim just going in for a 1v3, just trusting fully on Kahlua and the Imperial Sigil. However, the gold mine being taken now will be caught up by Gassing X, and maybe Gassing X can come in with a steal, but J3X Inferno will just back off to clear that lane.
Yeah, and you can see that Bren just having a very tough time right now. I mean, they don't have much vision on the either, and that's going to hurt them even more, as it will allow J3X Inferno to take objectives that much easier. And when you look at the vision coming out from the side of J3X Inferno, it's just everywhere at this point, all over the jungle. And there's not much the side of Bren Esports can do about that. You see Guessing, he tries to push in to contest the gold mine, but Bim just pushing him away instantly. I mean, at this point, 144 farm, over perfect CS, seeing at 13 minutes 56 in. and just has that Tornado Trigger, Poison Ship, and Sorrow Blade is able to do so much work. Doesn't even have the breaking point, and just is able to put down so much damage on his own. But really, where the main source of damage for the side of J3X Inferno is on Amok's Blaze, as he manages to land the Goop and the Spitfire, but guessing using the Gauntlet just to get into base. I mean, you're saving your life, but that Gauntlet is not going to be up for another 80 seconds. I'm not sure about that decision.
Yep, I'm not sure as well, but honestly, at this point in time, they can't quite be aggressive in terms of their team fight, but they may just look for a back door or a front door. Bim coming in for a flank, and the entirety of J3X Inferno, in fact, actually coming in for a flank, taking 2 chakram damage.
Yeah, well, they are going for the back door, but not on the base. They are backdooring Bren's whole entire team at this point, trying to find the way as they go in with that Imperial Sigil, but they don't manage to lock down anything. So although J3X Inferno have a lot of damage, they don't have much defense. As you can see, those CP Chakrams starting to hurt a bit more as Mr. Jim making his way into the late game. He does have the Alternating Current, Shatter Glass, and Broken Myth, but I'm not sure how it stacks up as opposed to Bim, the opposing laner, already with a lot more in terms of items overall, because he has the tier-free defense as well as free tier-free attack items.
At that point in time, honestly, the entirety of J3X Esports could have just went in, took the first turret down, and ended the game there and then, and there was really nothing that Bren Esports could have done unless it TP back in time.
Yeah, so I mean, J3X Inferno definitely are holding this game a bit too long and giving Bren Esports a bit of a chance to come back, so they do need to be careful about that and not to get too greedy. As going in deep and gets very low. This could be the chance. There's the Echo coming out on the Gauntlet as they're able to dive in once again, and Bim going very low. Petal able to pick up the kill. Actually goes over to Mr. Jim, who dives in with the Shimmer Strike, an amazing double kill onto the Scarf. He's gonna get the triple, and that is the comeback we were talking about. And as you mentioned, why the side of J3X Inferno should have just finished it sooner, instead letting it go on this long, providing the opportunity to Bren Esports, and they're going to be able to take the Kraken and a turret with that. They should be able to push into the base, and this could just be what they need to make the comeback. I mean, before that fight, it was Bren Esports singing about 27k, while the side of or 28k, while the side of the J3X Inferno were seeing about 38k. So they had that 10k gold lead. It looked like it could be the chance, but we'll have to leave it up to J3X to see if they can make anything happen here, make up for their mistakes now that the Gauntlet isn't on the table, and they're going to push in, but Bim taking a lot of damage on that backline. And it looks like Petal, Sync 1 trying to position themselves. Is going to get caught out with the Spitfire. And meanwhile, Mr. Jim on that Idris going to be able to take down the Vox, but needs to be careful to not get taken down himself if he falls here. And he does. Amok's Blaze going so very low, but there's going to be the Fountain to keep him alive. This means that I'm sure the side of J3X Inferno could finish it out with just the Scarf, but instead they're going to go and turn their attention to the Kraken, playing it quite safe towards this late game where they could just go into the enemy base at this point.
Yep, it does boggles my mind as to why teams play so safely and just continuously giving the entirety of Bren Esports that opportunity to just come back and then, or rather stage a comeback and close your game out. Kraken is down to half health. Kraken push 2 turrets. That is 500 gold in exchange for 500 gold. So all is well and even. However, now, you know, when you get your items, start getting your items, and you have the gold lead, it would not matter even if you have 15k, 10k, you know, 20k gold lead. Once everyone is fully built, it would not matter whatsoever. And we see Sync 1 now having 3, or rather 2 full damage items working towards the Tyrant's Monaco, requires about 200 more gold to complete it. And then we have Mr. Jim on that CP Idris, already 4 damage item and a reflex block as well.
Be the fight that ends it all, depending on how it's played. You can see the Chakrams coming out, doing a fair amount of damage. They did manage to get the Imperial Sigil out of Kalu, and that could be the chance for them to go in. Great Gauntlet lands onto Amok's Blaze and Bim on the backline, and there's going to be the second Gauntlet going down to trap out Bim, and Amok's Blaze is the last one standing for J3X Inferno, and they're going to chase him down, chase him back towards the base. unfortunately, Kraken not up once again. So Bren Esports are going to have to wait on that. But this is our opportunity to start making a comeback. And as you said before, once both the teams are fully built, you know, the gold lead, the gold difference doesn't matter at all. And we see that Bren Esports are going to push against this turret, but what can Armox Blaze do on their own? They have very low defense, and it's going to show as Bren Esports allowed to pick up the ace with Kalua only 5 seconds away before that happened. And now those minions going to be up to push in, but they do get the turret damage, should fall fairly quickly. Now, I don't know why Kalua is putting that much aggression, but speaking of aggression, J3X Inferno, a team who played so aggressively throughout this match, and we thought that, you know, this really was the way to shut down the weapon power pedal. When it really counted, they have one turret left to push, and they didn't play aggressively, and that could be what loses them the game, but we will have to see. They still have good vision on this Kraken. They know it's being taken. They can see it clearly. Whether that vision's going to get spotted out is the question, because Vox making their way up around the top brush, and Scarf soon to be joining the fight. There's going to be the wait for it to go in, and they could just focus on the Kraken at this point. Whichever team gets it is going to be so important, but it's going to go over to Bren Esports, and no one falls for them. I was sure Vox would be able to pick up a kill onto Bren Esports, but there's going to be Idris jumping in, taking out Lyra, the gauntlet going down. They're not going to find Scarf once again, but Scarf, all on his lonesome, has the whole team of Bren Esports to worry about, and a Kraken.
And this will be the perfect comeback for the side of Bren Esports. I must say the early aggression definitely worked in favor for the side of J3X Inferno, but they just couldn't close the game out, or rather when they thought it was time for them to close the game out, it was just a tad too late.
Ooh, however, Armox Blaze doing a lot of damage. They still need to be careful on the side of Bren Esports. Get too tunnel visioned onto these turrets, because Naibimbim is back up on the fold, and they are alive and kicking, going in with the wait for it, trying to focus down Mr. Jim on the backline, but guessing jumping in with the Vanguard onto Mr. Jim to keep him alive, and it looks like Sync1 gonna get caught out alone. They just need to focus down the turrets, and it looks like Mr. Jim's going to do just that, leaving it up to Kraken, but the damage coming out from the side of J3X Inferno might be enough to keep it alive. There's a Vanguard onto Mr. Jim, trying to get the Chakram damage onto the turret. He managed to do so, and he's gonna go down, but there's going to be Guessing still on the fold, hitting away at this crystal, manages to get it. That's 10-10, and they was just GG, well played into the second match between J3X Inferno and not the second match, in the first match between J3X Inferno and Bren Esports.
What an exciting, I know I don't sound very excited, I don't sound very hyped, but honestly I was just speechless.
Don't worry, I've got you covered on that.
J3X Inferno obviously had the game. They could have just easily backdoored that, but they just decided against it. They wanted more kills just to make the KDA look a little better, but what is the point? Because you just gave up your one and only chance. You gave them space to breathe, you gave them space to farm, and you gave them the gold as well. And very well played to Bren Esports for staging that epic comeback.
Yeah, very well played indeed. I mean, they were given opportunity and they took it, and for such a close game, you could see that the damage was still there on the side of J3X Inferno. They had it in the end fight, but it didn't matter because they weren't focusing on fighting for the side of Bren Esports. They were just focusing on burning down the objectives, and they managed to do so in the last second, keeping the Kraken alive and just managing to go for that comeback, which seemed near impossible for a game that looked so likely for J3X to win. So we'll have to see about the second match between those two teams, because I really don't know what to say. If J3X Inferno can play as they did before, all they need to do is change up how they played towards the mid to late game and be able to shut it out, because they played amazingly at the start of that game.
They definitely did play amazing, and there was no doubt about that. But honestly, I'm just so saddened by the fact that J3X Inferno cannot close the game out, because if we are rooting for underdogs, then we must stay true to ourselves, and J3X in this case is definitely the underdogs. However, draft is ready, so without further ado, let's just jump straight into draft.
Yeah, so we are in the draft. the blue side, do you think we might see a targeted ban perhaps onto this pedal, or maybe even so onto the lance, which I believe we saw before coming up from the side of J3X Inferno as their first ban?
Yep, but J3X Inferno probably would not ban out the lance. Maybe they want to secure the lance for themselves, but maybe just banning out the Idris. Mr. Jim on the Idris was quite a terror to deal with, to be honest. Although in the early game he kind of was shaky, he was rocky, he's unable to get farm and what have you not. But all in all, they did pull through, and the amount of damage coming up from 4 full items Idris was just immense, and there was really nothing that J3X Inferno could do about it, but just try to take him down as fast as possible. But that was not the case come into the late game. So I'm not surprised if J3X Inferno at this point in time would just ban out that Idris. If not, then at least maybe ban out the petal if they do not want to deal with the petal anymore.
Yep, and we'll have to see as they are going a fair bit into their bonus time. I'm sure we will see another draft reset. And yeah, with that, I mean, this first ban slot, it's the same as always, what I like to say, that it's usually going to be focused on those roam heroes that are really aggressive, such as the Lance and Catherine and Grace, all very viable bans for this first slot. But if you go away from roams, then you start to look at these carries such as the Idris and the Scarf pickup as well, and Celeste are all good first bans as well. And if we're looking more into targeted bans, then we're going to be open to the very dangerous weapon power pedal, although we could see that J3X Inferno previously were able to play against it fairly well. They just utilized the aggression they had, and if they can pick up Grace again, they might be able to go for the same tactic without having to ban out pedal, because in this case, they went and banned out the Lance.
Yep, J3X Inferno do ban that Lance out, just not allowing any teams. I mean, if they don't want the side of Bren Esports to play the Lance, they don't want to play the Lance, it's more respectable, or rather it's more sensible to just ban it out straight off. But for the side of Bren Esports, however, they can look to ban out. They are banning out that Grace, but they can actually look to ban out that Celeste and the Scarf in the same time, in the same ban as well. That way, they can just run their weapon pattern successfully without quite any issues. But this time, maybe run weapon pattern in lane, right? If you do actually run it in lane, we saw Mr. Genius pull it off so much better as compared to putting it in the jungle, because in the jungle, as long as the enemies are very aggressive in the jungle, then your plans are pretty much foiled. However, we will be seeing an Arden coming out for the side of J3X Inferno. Arden, quite a good pickup, and we will be seeing Mr. Jim once again opting for that Idris.
Yep, I mean, as you always say, if it's broken, why change it? And right now we're going to see the first pickup again being that Idris pick. It was allowed through the first bans, but a good change up I like to see this time was that they made sure, or not change up, but it's something the same again, was that Grace ban, making sure they don't give Grace over to the enemy team. And the question is, they didn't go for Lyra as their first pick, which was interesting, even though we see the same bans coming through for both teams actually. This was the exact same bans they went with. However, this time, the side of J3X Inferno decided to go for that Arden, and I think it shows that Arden is quite a strong roamer and captain still in the current meta, although he doesn't have those real hard stuns and the aggressiveness of, say, a Catherine, a Grace, or a Lance. What he provides in return is he has the ability to vanguard his teammates, get them out of dangerous situations, and the zoning potential he has with the gauntlet into the late game. But in return to that, we see the Finn pickup returning to the fold once again. I don't know about this. I feel like Finn is like the pickup you go for when the other captains are all banned out, but Catherine was still available, so I'm not too sure.
I mean, we have seen an emergence in Finn, and the only reason is because he's just so very tanky at this point in time. But the side of J3X Inferno will be going for a rather peculiar, or rather very similar team comp with that glaive and scarf that was put out by the side of Infamous as well. Moose Blaze probably will be on that Scarf once again, but this time I don't think Bren Esports would like or want to go for that Petal. I mean, Sky is still on board, and Sinquan plays a phenomenal Sky as well. And Sky generally would work relatively well with the Finn because you want to fight around the Finn. But however, we will be seeing a change up, not a Sky, not a Petal, but Cruel. Cruel works generally quite well against that of Glaive, or rather not Glaive, but Scarf, as long as you can just start to step your way out of the group. So that is one thing that maybe the side of J3X Inferno, or rather the side of Bren Esports, would like to achieve. And on top of that as well, Scarf, or rather Cruel, just works so well and is so very strong in that of the early game.
Yeah, and I think that looking at this draft so far, J3X Inferno have done a good job once again at getting a fairly balanced draft, and to be able to pick up that Glaive is also a good idea. But for the side of Bren Esports, I'm slightly worried. Of course, the Cruel is a good pick to go alongside Finn, as they're going to be able to stick fairly close together, and just it helps with the overall tankiness of that Cruel. There were other options still on the table, such as Black Feather, but it seems to be the case that Bren Esports really like playing the CP Idris rather than the weapon power. So in that case, we would have had to be seeing a weapon power Black Feather rather than the more common in the current meta CP Black Feather.
Well, I mean, for the current meta, usually you see a lot of weapon Black Feather and CP Idrises. I mean, no, weapon Idrises. But because CP Idris has got such a stronger chakram, and the range as well generally would help out all in all. So we see a lot of CP Idrises being picked up, and also because of the change made to weapon Idris, the reduction in damage that chakram can put out, and because of that, the CP Idris saw a rise and emergence of usage all in all. But for the Vainglory 8 itself, we have seen quite an interesting statistics throughout. The weapon Idris usually would win like 100% of the game, and then we have the CP Idris rather rocky, winning maybe like 10 or so % of the games that he's been played in. So all in all, I think it's only Bren Esports that have been quite or rather successful with the CP Idris, barring Trophies as well. Trophies plays the CP Idris very much like a mage, with two heroes able to peel for him. Whereas for Mr. Jim, he plays a very interesting CP Idris. He's very dynamic in terms of engage. He goes in, he wants to put out damage as well. However, we will be seeing Nai Bim Bim on the Scarf this time, and a Moose Blaze on that of Glaive.
Yeah, so that is a bit of a change up here, but we'll have to see how well Blaze can play on this Glaive, and I think it signals that Nai Bim Bim, of course, being the laner, is going to go Scarf lane in this situation. And do you think it's more so they did not want to put Scarf against the Cruel in the jungle, as Cruel could just be sitting and wait and then just jump onto the Scarf?
Honestly, that is what a Cruel should do in general, but all in all, it will be quite a difficult job because we have a Moose Blaze to be able to just peel.
Ooh, and it looks like that side of J3X Inferno barely cure that yet. And yes, into the team fights, we will be seeing that kind of situation for the side of J3X Inferno once they're into the late and mid game. But whether they want to hyper farm this Scarf is the question. As we've seen before with a lot of weapon power Glaives, that they can go fairly budget and don't have to go so all in with buying over weapon power arms to start with, and can do a lot early on with just, say, even a Sorrow Blade. Once they get that, they have quite the power spike.
Yeah, but very, very well placed for this Scarf to be able to just put Scarf in that of lane, going up against Mr. Jim on a CP Idris. Generally, it will work well for you because you can just poke out an Idris in that early game, because that is one of the weakness that we saw in any Idrises, but guessing now very low force to pop that flask that he has.
Yep, and it looks like just a bit of poke damage going down. Bib fairly low on energy, and Kahlua was fairly low on health, but guessing in return is lower on health and is going to get taken down by the Glaive, who goes in with Afterburn to pick up the first blood. So J3X Inferno once again starting off strong. Mr. Jim needs to be careful as he's there left on his own, and Almox Blade is going to dive in deep for it. has to use the minion candy to help push the wave out, as he's currently under a lot of pressure, and Sync 1 rotating up the lane is going to find Bim, probably going to be able to get the kill onto them, and he manages to do so, and just running back out of there and sitting and waiting in the bush for the passive, as he's now going to look for Kahlua, but realizing that Almox Blaze is nearby, decides not to take the fight.
Yep, I mean, for all in all, Cruel's playstyle is rather exciting, or rather interesting to watch all in all, because as a Cruel, generally you see different playstyles. When you have Cassandra as a Cruel, very, very patient, but Kahlua face checking that brush and forcing, or rather stopping Mr. Jim to go back. And Cassandra, you see a very patient Cruel. Whereas for Sync 1, he's patient till he gets his heroic perk up and immediately just jump onto Bim earlier on. So very good play, very different in terms of play style as well. And continuing on my previous point, it's very good for a Scarf to go up against a CP Idris, because the early game for CP Idris is just so bad until you get a divergent path and your empowerment of your basic attacks and your range as well. And with that, capitalizing on that fact will always just beat you good Amux Blaze, or rather Kahlua.
But right now the damage is really coming on for the Esports as he picks up his second kill, making rotation up to lane, getting the gank off successfully, but Mr. Jim gets taken down by Blaze, who dived under turret. Sync 1 could just turn his attention and take Almox Blaze, but he's too distracted by Bim. He's going to get the smite off. He might actually be able to catch out Almox Blaze for the double, and Sync 1 going to go down to the turret, sadly. I believe Guessing had the Polite Company. I'm not sure if it just came up before Sync 1 died there, but I'm not too sure what happened. They're still in the lead of kills just by 1, but the gold lead actually slightly, ever so slightly, in favor of J3X Inferno.
Yep, definitely. I mean, J3X Inferno definitely playing so much better, especially with Bim able to just put a lot of pressure onto Mr. Jim in this early game, especially since Mr. Jim not even completing the Frostburn or the Shatter Glass yet to get any of the Divergent Path unlocked, and this time just really relying on Guessing on this Finn to just tank up for him and soak up as much damage and minion damage as well, going in for the poke. But we do see Amongst Blaze once again going in, or rather looking for that afterburn.
Yep, looking for the afterburn indeed, and there's Sync 1 coming up. Bim now with some crystal power, able to do a bit more, able to pick up a kill onto Bim, and they're going to secure the kill onto Kahlua as well. The double kill for Mr. Jim this time, although Sync 1 playing a very important role there. The gank coming up from such an unexpected angle into the From Hell's Heart worked out so well, and Almox Blaze going very low to that CP Chakram. And now you see a slight power spike on the side of Bren Esports, because previously Mr. Jim only had the Book of Eulogies and the Light Shield as he is focused on staying alive in the laning phase. But oh my, Sync 1 just coming out of nowhere, putting down a lot of damage. Needs to be careful, however, as the turret puts down more, and I'm not sure he won't be able to make the back, but oh my, make the back, but he did manage to get a kill in return. Those reactions were pretty good on the side of Sync 1, not going down without a fight and not losing everything for nothing. And you can see that right now Bren Esports playing a lot better into this early game.
Yep, they are definitely playing so much better into this early game, and Sync 1 just being very patient definitely pays off for the side of Bren Esports. Glaive picking up Finn.
Yep, it's definitely very back and forth at the moment as J3X able to pick up the kill onto Finn. They might be able to get Mr. Jim as we're not going to go down to the turret. He will be able to escape just barely, and Sync 1, meanwhile, who was waiting in the wings, going to be able to find Kahlua. He did use the From Hell's Heart, so that's not available to take out anyone else, and now it leaves the turret wide open, and Finn really the only one to stop this. I don't think he can. The siege coming out from Scarf once again, just too strong, and is able to take it. He might be able to cancel the back off of Almox Blaze. Nope, doesn't manage to do so. So we're really losing everything out here, but he does catch out Bim with that quibble into the Chakram. It's a good way for Mr. Jim to be able to land those. Definitely helps out there. But overall, it's a much more even game, I'd like to say.
Yep, definitely an even game throughout. I mean, the placement of the heroes plays a big part, and they are really just waiting for guessings level 6 and level 8. Why both of this level 6 you get the hook, level 8 you get your stun as well. Sync 1 soloing that gold miner and will not be challenged whatsoever. I mean, Kahlua did try to come in for a C-look, but it was just not enough. However, Sync 1 goes in with that empowerment as well, but will be forced to back off overall.
Yeah, they are forced back for now, but guessing, getting in a position
to
force the court in and gets on to Kahlua, but Kahlua going to use the gauntlet over the wall, and I guess that's two ultimates just being traded out by Eva, Roma, and right now J3X Inferno more so just looking to put pressure on this lane, and they forced the afterburn out of Almox players, so this could be the chance for them to push in. Although Guessing doesn't have that forced accord available to him, he's still able to help them secure the kill as Sync 1 goes in with the From House Hut onto Kahlua, and that's leaving them without that Roma. But as long as Nibimba can burn down these minions, they should be okay. But there's going to be a very aggressive maneuver coming out from the side of Bren Esports as the Shimmer Strike onto Sync 1 on that crew just goes in onto Scarf, and then Mr. Jim is like, thanks for the ride, jumps off, and they manage to pick up Nibimba, now looking for the turret, maybe even looking for Armox Blaze, who has that afterburn up in just a second and won't be able to use it to get out of there, gets shut down instead, and Bren Esports looking a lot better this game.
That weapon battle definitely was not a very good pick by Mr. Jim, though. Next target of Nibim, but will get away safely with that polite company to provide that extra fortified health from Guessing X. And honestly, the weapon battle wasn't quite a good pick all in all, because we know how comfortable Amu's Blaze was on that Scarf, right? So then the weapon battle pickup was almost as if Guessing X is just going like, you know what, let me just go this weapon battle and I'll see how it goes. But this time around, they definitely have thought through, or rather have thought through all they want to play and what they need to know about the side of J3X Inferno.
Oh, great use of the Force Accord into the Quibble, and they managed to, I think, force out the Crucible coming from Kahlua. Meanwhile, Nibim getting chased down by Sync 1, but Sync 1 not able to kill him soon enough, has to back off from the fight for just a second, but Idris on the back line able to clean up Amok's place. Sync 1 jumping into the fight once again, this time onto Kahlua. Nibim separated from his Romas, left on his own to fight this one out, but will he be able to win it? He's between the Crystal Sentry and the whole. It doesn't look like he's going to be able to. That's an ace for the side of Bren, and they're able to stay all of their keep all of their team members alive through that fight. And it looks like Mr. Jim just going to go up to clear the lane, meanwhile leave the rest of his team to take this gold mine. But whether Glaive is aware of this, I'm not sure. It looks like he is going to go over the wall with Afterburn. No, he isn't going to be able to contest this one. So more so maybe just wanting to secure his own farm than anything.
Yep, and honestly, just now, I was thinking that Amu's Blaze will still be on the Scarf, and Nibim will take the Glaive up into lane. That way, your Glaive, you can constantly just pull off an Afterburn and try to get on to Mr. Jim. But Guessing XO, finding Nibim, polite company.
Yeah, polite company lands and Nibim back position. No one around. We're stuck at base, and Amok's Blaze just in lane. I believe there might be connection. No, Kahlua's back. So I guess just bad positioning to be caught out in lane like that. And you saw help from House Heart already used. So it means that it won't be up now, but Bren Esports not going to let that stop them from pushing into this turret, pushing back the team of J3X Inferno and pushing back the minion wave. Now going to focus their attention onto this turret, but do they have the damage to take it? The Chakram's trying to come out to get it, but no, it looks like the second turret for now will stay up, and Guessing taking a lot of damage at this point. Should be careful. He doesn't have the Forced Accord, and he's just going to be there to tank up damage. Will they be able to get the turret? They managed to, but look, Sync 1 is caught out in the gauntlet, gets taken down by Nibim, walks right into the goop, into the Spitfire, and it doesn't look like Mr. Jim can do enough on his own without Sync 1 being there in the front line. He almost takes Almox Blaze out, but it's not enough. Oh, using the Shimmer Strike onto Nibim, and he's able to pick up the kill onto Glaive. Now just trying to walk away, juke away, I should say, from this team fight. Kahlua trying to get close to him, but that's not the right idea as Mr. Jim throwing out the chakrams, doing a lot of damage, guessing, tanking up a lot. And it looks like Kahlua going so very low. Mr. Jim needs to be careful not to get greedy. One auto attack will be enough to do it. But Scarf on Night Bim Bim on the Scarf, able to get the kill. And Sync 1 that whole time, the elongated the fight just went on too long. Sync 1 able to rush all the way back from death from the base and get the kill.
Yeah, but Sync 1 now will be met by Amuk's Blaze on that big kitty cat. But Amuk's Blaze will just be interested in those lane farm and food and not so much of Sync 1. I must say, Sync 1 playing very, very well as a very assassin-like Cruel, if that makes sense. He comes in with the heroic perks, and then on top of that, he has got Mr. Jim as well on the CP Idris. And the moment he lands at DMR, Mr. Jim jumps out of nowhere and then immediately just
forced the cord onto the J3X Inferno, manages to follow up quick, but the rest of the team wasn't there to really follow up and damage, but they're definitely pushing the side of J3X Inferno back. There's a defensive gauntlet, but it doesn't really catch anyone out. It keeps them in there, but Kahlua has to stay in there with the rest of them to give over his life just so his teammates can get out of there. And right now, Bren Esports are playing a lot more aggressively, and I think it's due to the fact that they didn't have to wait for, say, a weapon power pedal to ramp up, and they can just use this assassin-like Cruel that you mentioned to play very aggressive themselves, and they're kind of just countering previous aggression with their own aggression, and it works out in the case that Scarf is a hero that needs to get to the late game, and if they're able to shut down Scarf anymore as we move on to Kraken, that will soon be available, Bren Esports should be able to close out this game fairly easily.
And I personally really like the combo, the wombo combo that the side of Bren Esports is putting out with that Shimmer Strike into Cruel and Cruel DMR in. He's Idris Shimmer strikes out, and then boom, a high burst of damage, immediately taking out Night Bim Bim earlier on when he was caught out of position. So that is quite innovative coming out from them. I mean, usually you see that Idris, or rather the Taka delivery system coming out from Idris and Taka combo. Rarely would you see this Cruel and Idris being used in this particular delivery system, like Asrai likes to call them.
Yes, well, I do think that it's aggressive and it's confident in play. It's also got a lot of synergy that has to be put into it, because for Mr. Jim to use his Shimmer Strike at that point in time means he has no way of getting out later from the fight, so it is definitely a commitment into the fight. But if Bren Esports are willing to do it, and if they're able to pull it off, it definitely works wonders for them. Forster Cord going to get blocked, however, they did manage to get the anchor turret away from the enemy team, and with Kraken up on the fold, this means they could just push in with one Kraken if they're able to secure it and take the win. But Sync 1 going low on the backline here, Night Bim Bim charging up that Dragon's Breath and diving deep is going to fall to the Idris, and meanwhile Amok's Blade is going to get taken down by Sync 1. Mr. Jim going to chase down Kahlua for the double kill. They managed to do so, and they don't even want the Kraken at this point. They're just going to push through for the win. There's a little emote by Guessing, and they're going to take the turrets with ease. Guessing not even going to help his teammates, just going to say, well, Sync 1, Mr. Jim, you guys can do all the work.
Yep, you guys can do all the work. Indeed, a lot of damage coming out from the side of Bren Esports in this game, and to react with aggression definitely worked out for the side of Bren Esports. I mean, we all know Bren Esports as a team that has been very, very aggressive throughout, and that is really how they kind of won impunity. They are not one of those that wants to turtle up and try their bestest to farm up, and I guess this works very well for them. If